WrestleZone was the first to report, and it has since been confirmed by the Observer, that the current plan for WrestleMania is for AJ Styles to wrestle The Undertaker. Undertaker has not had a match since the tag team match in July of last year at Extreme Rules, tagging with Roman Reigns against Drew McIntyre and Shane McMahon. A match where he actually looked pretty good, but it's hard to say how much of that was kind of part of the illusion because he was in a tag team match. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit easier when he's in a tag team match, and half the time he's standing on the apron. Then again, he had a tag team match at the Crown Jewel show last year against DX, and that was one of the worst things I'd ever seen. So, that was the last time we saw Undertaker in the ring. His last WrestleMania match was the squash over John Cena at WrestleMania 34. He skipped last year's show. And now it looks like he's coming back to wrestle AJ for the first time ever. If Undertaker is going to have a match, and I wish he wouldn't, but if he's going to have a match, there are not very many opponents better for him to step into the ring with than AJ Styles. Even a 40-year-old AJ Styles that is no longer the AJ Styles of old is still one of the best they have in the entire company. 10 years earlier, the Undertaker of 10 years ago and the AJ Styles of 10 years ago, those two could have torn the house down like Undertaker did with Shawn Michaels. Today, if AJ can bring him to a quality singles match, they could put that on his Hall of Fame resume. It would be no small victory. He really should not be in the ring anymore. Outside of maybe one last match, like the 30-year anniversary idea that I pitched for Survivor Series this year against Aleister Black, AJ's going to bump his ass off for him. He's going to make him look as good as he can possibly look. If AJ Styles cannot bring The Undertaker to a good match at WrestleMania, then nobody can. I'm intrigued by this match. I'm not saying that it's something that I, had wanted to see, but now that it looks like it's going to happen, I am intrigued. I am intrigued to see if there's a Styles clash, no pun intended, between the two of them, how they work together. Generally, in the past, when Undertaker has worked with a guy smaller than him, and they can bounce around for him, that's why I keep thinking of the matches with Shawn Michaels. Those are the best kind of matches. You could say the same thing about Brock Lesnar. Brock could also go in there and have matches that are pretty good. I mean, he had some pretty good matches back in the day against Big Show. And even The Undertaker. But now it's when you see Brock in there with the smaller guys. Like, he's going to devour Ricochet at the Saudi show. But we're probably going to get some fun spots where Ricochet gets thrown around like a rag doll. Right? That's when Brock is really at his best. When they can really show, they call him the Beast, right? When he's in there tossing dudes around like they're nothing, like they're weightless. That's when it gets fun. So these two may end up having terrific chemistry together, or it may not matter if Undertaker is very limited in what he can do. We're not going to know until we see the match. I'm interested in how they get to the match. What's the story that leads to the match? Does AJ win the trophy in Saudi Arabia and come out gloating on TV? And then the lights go out and the dong hits and the Undertaker comes out and he stares at the stupid sign and he walks off? Does AJ lose in Saudi Arabia and come out on TV all upset, and then The Undertaker comes out to confront him? Does AJ call out The Undertaker? I think the way you do it is, if AJ comes out on Raw, he talks about WrestleMania is right around the corner. We're, however many weeks away now from WrestleMania, and I have no opponent for the show. That's how little this company thinks of me. He feels disrespected by this. I'm the best they got. I don't even have an opponent on the biggest show of the year. I'm the man around here. I am the true Phenom in WWE. I am the phenomenal one. Do some kind of play off the whole phenomenal thing. And that's how you get this going. I mean, whether Undertaker shows up that night or he shows up a few weeks later, that's how I can see this playing out. Especially if AJ is going to be the heel in this match. But Undertaker has not had a truly good, memorable WrestleMania match. I mean, when the streak ended, it's probably the most shocking moment in company history, okay? Maybe outside of Montreal or something, but it's up there. It was a memorable moment. As a match, it sucked because he got hurt. He was concussed 5 minutes into the match. Would it have been much better if he didn't get hurt? I don't know. Maybe they just had an off night, whatever it was. It was memorable, but it wasn't good. The last truly good WrestleMania match I believe that The Undertaker had was WrestleMania 29. against CM Punk. He looked better at 31 against Bray Wyatt than he did the year before, but the year before he looked like shit. So, how good really was the match with him and Bray Wyatt at 31? Just because he looked better than he did the year before doesn't mean it was some really good match. I go all the way back to 29 in 2013, the match with CM Punk. That was a quality match. That's a long time ago. That was a long time ago. So here's hoping that AJ can pull a rambling rabbit out of his ass, because it ain't going to be easy. I just think of the interview that Undertaker did with Steve Austin on the Broken Skull Sessions on the network, where he talked about now there's a whole process that is needed for a few hours before each one of his matches now to get his body ready for it, to get his body loosened up for it. And then, of course, when the match is over and the days and weeks that follow, there's a lot of pain. All of the injuries that this guy has had. Kurt Angle gave an interview this week to a show out of London called TKO with these guys, Carl Frampton and Chris Lloyd. I'd never heard of them before. And I found their YouTube channel, and they did a little in-studio sit-down interview for about half an hour with Kurt Angle. Really good interview. And one of them asked Kurt if you could do it all over again if you had the chance. Would you? Would you do it all over again? Your career, everything you did, the bumps, everything. Would you do it all over again if you had the chance? And Kurt admitted, he goes, I don't know. He said, I'm hurting pretty bad right now with my knees and my neck and my back. He said his quality of life right now sucks. And he has a lot of suffering. These are the words he used. Quality of life sucks. Suffering. He knew enough, albeit probably too late, to get out of the ring. He knew when it was time. He said, I just can't go anymore. And, that was that. In fact, he has said that Vince McMahon, it's almost like he wanted him to go another year, and Kurt said, I can't. It's got to be, when they did the retirement last year, it's got to be now. And Vince said, well, if that's the case, I'd like for you to wrestle Baron Corbin. And so that's how we got the Baron Corbin match. Kurt realized, I can't do it anymore. And just watching Kurt, even now when you watch him, when he was the general manager, he'd be on TV, his knees are bent. He couldn't even straighten his legs out. He'd be standing there and his knees are all bent. And it was just painful to watch. It was painful just to watch him walk and move around. And that's Kurt Angle. I mean, Kurt Angle beat his body to shit too. And nobody forced him to take all those bumps. Nobody forced him to do moonsaults off the top of a cage. I'm sure Kurt would say the same thing. He made those choices. Nobody forced him to do it. Nobody put a gun to his head. And unfortunately now, there are consequences that have to be paid. But it sucks, because you grow up watching these guys, you respect them, you respect their work ethic and all that. And yeah, it was their choice. And so it's not our fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. But you feel bad for them. You don't want them to suffer. You don't want Kurt to be doing interviews talking about his 6 kids and how he's at home and his quality of life is shit. I mean, it broke my heart to hear him say that. Because I've heard him recently say he's feeling pretty good and his neck is doing well. And this was the first time I've really heard him sit there and just open up honestly and say, yeah, my quality of life right now is terrible. It sucks. And I was really thinking about that, when I watched that interview yesterday, and I was thinking about this whole Undertaker thing and what he had just told Steve Austin, something kind of similar. You just get to a point where you need to think about your quality of life. And Undertaker's even older than Kurt is. He's got Kurt beat by about, 4 or 5 years? Kurt's 51. Undertaker's probably 55-ish. And a much bigger guy. I'm surprised that with his knees, as big as he is, he's lasted this long. You just get to a point where you got to think about your quality of life. Yeah, I get it. It's his career. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't give a shit what I think. It's not my choice. It's his choice. But, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it anymore?